Our secretary is not here yet, but soon, and we can supplement.
I will put together mangled notes.
Put together the notes. Thank you so much.
Christy.
In any event, welcome everybody. Hope you've had a nice summer. It's good to see all of you back and to be back together again in person. Let's see. And I know at least one congratulations in order in terms of a new member of a family.
Yeah. Pretty excited about
Congratulations,
that.
Dave. Let's see, what I'm gonna do is ask for approval of the minutes, and then I think in deference to our guests, who I don't wanna have sit around waiting for committee reports, I think we'll skip right to the discussion of the SLR report, and then discussion of grant up. Do you think that makes sense,
That's
Jerry?
exactly right, yeah.
Okay.
And I'll introduce her.
And so we can vote for the minutes now. So I move that the minutes of our July 18th. Take a breath. I move that the minutes of our July 18th, 2023 minutes be approved with one tiny editorial. Actually, it's not an editorial, it's a proofreading comment. There's a space that needs to be added between two words, so we'll get that done. But with that change, can I ask for a second?
I can.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Stay, okay, passed. Let's go right to, I'm gonna skip the report of recent and upcoming events. We'll get to that later. A lot of interesting and exciting things happening, or have just happened. Well, the only thing you've missed so far, we're gonna pull up a chair and sit at the table with us. This room.
No, but I was gonna look at that.
Yeah, okay. The only thing you've missed so far, Madam Secretary, is approval of the minutes, which was done unanimously with that addition of the space between the two words.
Oh, I took that out.
Okay, so those, then,
No, I took that sentence out.
oh, you took the sentence out? Okay, so the sentence, the minutes have been approved out the offending sentence.
Right, I just found it. Yes.
Okay.
It said something about.
Okay, so, let's begin, and, Debbie, I said we're gonna skip the report on recent and upcoming events, not skip it, but move past it temporarily so we can get right to our guests and not have them sit through unnecessary, reading, I wouldn't say trivia, but unnecessary stuff for their purposes. The first, presentation, is gonna be by, I don't even get your name from SLR,
Miguel Castellanos.
Miguel.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. We have, we've had access to the SLR report. Some of us have printed it out and even read it. But we'd like you to take us through, because a lot of what we're doing right now, one of our big projects, as you may know, is consideration of a potential Mamaroneck Greenway, which I think you talk in your report, describe as a floodable linear park. But we'd like to understand what SLR has done, what they're recommending, and to the extent that you're familiar at all with our plans or thinking about a linear park, how what you're suggesting or recommending is either consistent or inconsistent with that idea.
Well, yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to speak about our report and basically what that entails. I'm actually not familiar with your concept of a linear park. I would like to hear more about that potentially, but I can share at least from my end what we were talking about in our report. I can even share some slides with you if you'd like, but basically I think for that section where we're talking about a greenway and a floodable linear park, where that was specifically being described along the Sheldrake River. as you guys know, that area is very encroached, and buildings and roadways are, at the top of the banks right next to the river, with very little room to create floodplain conveyance, which would help alleviate some of the flooding that we see along that stretch of the Sheldrake. And basically what the report states is that, a study would need to be conducted to further kind of investigate the best combination of property acquisition, roadway relocations that would optimize converting some of that space back into a floodplain, and including replacement of undersized bridges as well.
Yeah, why do you, if you have the ability to share slides, that would be great.
Yeah. Here, let me share my screen. Okay. So I had prepared a few slides if you wanted me to go over them, but I can just jump around.
The lights, so we can see this.
And basically
This fan,
to the more pertinent slides. Sorry about this. I'm gonna
fan, somewhere
hop
along.
on.
Is
that better?
Yeah. It's just that it.
Yeah.
Yes, where it's other one.
So this is that area that oh, can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then, because it's not bothering me right there, just, so you have more work to do.
Fans are off.
Okay. Is it okay if I continue? Sorry, it's a little difficult for me to hear.
Yeah.
So as the report is broken down into these what we called high risk areas, these are areas where we've received a lot of basically reports from the community that repetitive flooding is pretty chronic and severe. So this is what we designated as high risk area 4, which begins at the confluence, which is along the Sheldrake River from the confluence with the Mamaroneck River upstream to the New York State I-95 bridge crossing. Here specifically, this is where we called out that linear parkway area, which pretty much begins right at this park that's along the Sheldrake River. Upstream of here, there's I guess downstream of this location, the channel becomes very encroached and walled in, and with very low capacity to convey flood flows, and it starts spilling its banks pretty early on in any major storm event. So what we had proposed here was basically doing some sort of feasibility study to investigate the opportunity to convert some of that space back into floodplain, and also including some, like I mentioned, replacement of undersized bridges. And that's shown on this graphic on the right here. Are there any questions, or is this more or less in alignment with what the village is considering?
Well, we don't know exactly what the village is considering. Your two elements of it at least, and Jerry, you may be able to add something further. There is a comprehensive plan that is being considered. Actually, it may have already been adopted, which conceptually supports the creation of a linear park, but there's no detail in it. We ourselves as a committee have done more detailed thinking about it, perhaps than the village has, and we've actually walked the areas that we think are suitable, and they go along both the Mamaroneck and the Sheldrake rivers. But we haven't actually put the meat to the bones. It's still conceptual from our standpoint too.
David?
Yeah, go ahead.
Miguel, can you go to the slide? I don't know what HRA it is, but can you go to the slide between the Ward Avenue Bridge and the Tompkins Avenue Bridge? Because it would be easier for us to explain what we're thinking.
I believe it's this slide that we're talking about. Ward Avenue and Tompkins is right here.
So between Ward and Tompkins, right, in your report, you discuss the potential of taking some areas basically backyards and creating the shelf concept. Where, so that shelf concept along the Mamaroneck River between Tompkins, and if you guys see where Tompkins is, it's on the,
Yeah.
it's on the right, it's on the right hand side at the bottom, right? And then Ward is up here, right? So let me move this out of the way. Okay, so this flood bench creation under the proposed Ward Avenue Bridge to offset the flow. So the flood bench, the way SLR is describing it, could be the walkable greenway that we're talking about, if that makes any sense to you.
Yes,
Yeah.
we walked there, that's what we were.
Right.
Yes.
And so that's what this committee has, and this is, and I'll warn you, but this committee does a lot of great things, and they have big ideas and they have small ideas, and they execute all of that. So the reality is, in areas like that, which is the easiest that comes to mind for me to explain, there are other areas that the committee members have walked throughout the village that could be similar to that, what David is describing as a linear park. It's basically a floodplain bench that would have a walkway that could be floodable during large rain events. But most of the time, it's, you know, a walkable pathway for people to get exercise and enjoy nature. So you have flood bench creation on the left-hand aerial, right in the middle of the page, right? So what we're discussing is flood bench creation throughout the river, the riverine area, where part of that could be converted to a park or a walkable, I guess, trail, right, guys? A trail.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why you're here tonight, to talk about those areas and the potential for those areas as described in the report.
Could
I
I
see.
ask a question or make a comment? So, you know, the Tompkins Bridge to Ward Avenue is not very high, it's not very far from Long Island Sound. Yet you're gonna pay a lot of money to remove houses there. So, you know, what you're protecting is what's downstream of that area.
Yeah.
Which is not a lot. Where I see, and I think a lot of people in Washingtonville would agree, where I see the major problem is in the industrial area along the Sheldrake. Especially that curve when you come out of Bud Walker Park.
So that's HRA 4 then.
Yeah.
And of course, those are, you know, viable businesses, suburban carting and all this stuff. That property might be expensive, but that's where they've built, you know, right up to the edge of the Sheldrake.
Got a sign.
And, got trucks parked, you know, practically hanging over the river. Right there.
Yeah.
I mean, are you considering, or in terms of your shelf, are you looking at that at all?
Yeah, I think I might have jumped the gun here. If you'd like, I can step through the presentation slides in order, so that way I can kind of bring everybody up to speed on you know, what our study looked at and the various like floodplain benches that we recommended throughout the various high risk areas, which if that's okay, if there's time for that, maybe that would make a little bit more sense.
We will make time for it because we're getting one shot at you, at least for the moment, and we'd like to learn as much as we can about what you're thinking.
Yes.
As possible.
Yeah, and you know, I'm glad you guys have a copy of the report. I'd definitely give it a quick read if that's possible. Basically, here I would just step through some of the slides kind of from the very beginning and talking about this flood study that we conducted and basically what we're trying to accomplish, because I think this will give a better idea of those recommendations that are described in greater detail in the report. So our focus watershed was the Mamaroneck River watershed, which includes the Mamaroneck River and the Sheldrake River, along with other tributaries that are much smaller, such as the East Branch Sheldrake River and the East Branch Mamaroneck River. So we looked at holistically the watershed, but mostly looking at riverine flooding specifically. There are a lot of drainage issues because, as we all know, this is a very developed watershed. It's almost 80% developed with little room for, you know, storage and from forest land, wetlands, and undeveloped floodplains. We found a hydraulic analysis that a lot of the flooding was driven by undersized crossings that span the channel, and also an undersized channel in some areas as well, and lack of floodplain. So in a few locations, there were really hard bends in the creek, as you may all be familiar with, especially near the confluence of the Sheldrake and the Mamaroneck River, and even along the Sheldrake River itself, as we were just talking about that industrial area. So these all contribute to flooding, or if not, make flooding worse. We also know that there's a lot of encroachment by roadways and buildings on both banks along both watercourses, which is quite common in these urbanized settings, but makes coming up with feasible flood reduction alternatives very challenging. Just because in order to make room for the river, you got to convert some of that space or transform some of that space that's currently being occupied to allow the river to be able to convey flood events. So we were fortunate enough to have this 2017 study that was conducted by the Army Corps. It had some of the products that came out of this were used in our analysis, including a hydrologic model and even hydraulic model, which was a HEC-RAS one-dimensional model. Eventually was used to supplement some of our own modeling, which we developed for the village of Mamaroneck. We developed it to the unsteady state model, and we're able to use these products to basically make this happen. Our study expanded elsewhere in the watershed beyond just the village of Mamaroneck. As I mentioned early on, I looked at some of the other tributaries and other areas in the headwaters of the Mamaroneck and the Sheldrake. And I guess the next slides kind of step through what some of the recommendations that are being made in the report call for this floodplain bench or this multi-stage channel creation. So these next few slides are meant to kind of clarify exactly what that is referring to. Here we have what would be a typical cross section. This can be, Sheldrake or Mamaroneck River with homes built on the banks, or businesses and roadways. So right now we're just showing a normal flow, which any channel is able to contain within its banks, not causing any flooding. We may have low flow conditions, such as in the summertime, where just water is, shallow within the lowest section of the channel. And then we have our storm events, for example, that cause flooding. Water breaks over the banks and, causes flooding of the homes that are on the floodplain. So what we're typically recommending in our report is this multi-stage channel concept, which looks at widening the channel to convey the bankful flow. So what this means is it's like approximately like an annual or 2-year storm event that's referred to as the bankful event. But you don't want to over widen the channel because that can lead to lower velocities, which can disrupt sediment transport and lead to other problems such as aggradation of material during, your typical annual flow events. So with the bankful channel, then we also create a floodplain that conveys higher flows. So you increase channel conveyance without over widening the channel under normal flows or the normal bankful flow channel. And when constructed, and then sorry about that. I think there's another animation here. And you also create a low flow channel. So this low flow channel is meant to concentrate flows during the summertime, helping with other considerations such as like aquatic organism passage and making sure there's enough depth in the channel during those lower and drier months of the year. And when constructed, ideally the channel would look like what's shown here. You have these various stages that are meant to be flooded at different flow events. So your low flow summertime, you have low flows being concentrated in this, more adequately sized channel instead of being shallow and, kind of providing a lot of ecological benefits there for fish passage. And then you have your bankful channel, which is contained within the bankful flow, which is meant to optimize sediment transport to, not leading to aggradation, or also not being super narrow that it increases velocities and you have scouring happening. And then during a flood, now you have water being conveyed within the channel and also across the floodplain that you created, which, because of the additional conveyance space, now you're able to alleviate flooding at some of those homes that are currently on the overbanks. And what we see, in what we saw a lot of, or what the situation here in the Mamaroneck River watershed is that you have development on both banks, right? So you have buildings on the left, buildings on the right. And in order to, create this concept of a multi-stage channel, sometimes you need to sacrifice and choose where you want to create that space, where you want to convert and remove certain homes from the floodplain in order to alleviate others. So existing conditions, you may have flooding all across town, but with the creation of that multi-stage channel, and that includes a floodplain, a bankful, and a low flow channel, you're able to now alleviate, flooding at 3 houses by removing 1 out of the 4. And typically this is what our report is stating across, the various high-risk areas that I was talking about, basically providing some recommendations of where this could be feasible or where it should be investigated even further, just because, as we can see, there are homes immediately on the banks of the river, and in order to reduce flooding to any surmountable degree, you need to convert some of the space. And this space can be multi-use. It could be a park, it could be a trail. It doesn't need to be just grassland that's not, that is left alone and doesn't provide any sort of other benefit to the community.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Have you or do you incorporate permeable surfaces in your planning? So where there is building very close up to where the river would flow, by increasing the permeable surface, one could, rather than, forcing people to move out of their homes, come up with a bit of a Band-Aid perhaps, or half of the solution?
Yeah, permeable surface for sure certainly does provide benefits. It allows water infiltration, recharging of the water table. There are a lot of benefits that it provides holistically if you thought throughout. Unfortunately, because of the degree of development that is along the water courses here, it wouldn't really amount to much. Let's say you grab your parking lot that's at, that's, at the center, at the confluence of the Mamaroneck and the Sheldrake, and you were able to, tear that blacktop off and convert it to permeable pavement. It would not provide any surmountable, difference, because yes, you're infiltrating more water, but like that little pocket that you're storing does not, looking at the whole watershed and everything draining to that point, it doesn't, unfortunately, do anything during these like catastrophic flood events that we're starting to see more often now. If that does that answer your question?
I mean, I guess the answer is not great, right? I was hoping that would be one way we could, tackle the situation without forcing people to move and other things like that.
Yeah.
Politically, I don't even know how we do that.
Right, so that's the tough part, but as far as us as a village, when we do parking lots now, we're doing permeable paving. So even though it's a little bit, or it's not gonna be, the overall solution, at least we're doing something to try to get to where we need to be. So,
If
Right.
we could help somehow with people, I need to redo my driveway, I have a gravel driveway.
Yeah.
I don't intend to put asphalt down, but if that tiny bit of piece of information could get out to the public. As far as this is what the village is doing, this is what we're encouraging because we're trying to fight this bigger battle, every little bit helps.
so our first project's gonna come up, 10/10, right after, Columbus Day. So we'll be on the work section, and then I'll try to get that word out, like you're saying, and
Where is it?
it's gonna Continental View, it's right up against Otter Creek. Off of, off the Post Road.
That's what we discussed earlier in the meeting.
Yep,
That's great.
So, I mean, it becomes a show and tell, right?
correct,
So it should be a big hoopla event.
it will be.
Okay,
Is,
good.
is there a way to change the building code that you?
It's easy for us to set the example, because we wanna do it, and there's, a little bit of extra money in our village, because we're fiscally healthy. But it's difficult to do that, because I think, the cost is significant, it's gonna be more, even though it doesn't seem like more, and it's really just for parking lots, you can't use permeable paving on roads, it just doesn't work.
But can you use it
So-
on driveways?
On driveways,
I think we should just.
We should stay focused here.
While we have Miguel,
Yeah.
why don't we focus questions on Miguel, to Miguel, and then we can have our internal
Yeah, sorry,
discussion
that was my
afterwards.
distraction.
That's right,
Miguel, I just would like to make you aware that you mentioned as an example, the parking lot in Columbus Park, the confluence of the river. That there's an actual proposal that we made last year along with the flood committee to lower that parking lot, make it in fact more of a shelf. To lower it and to then use permeable pavement on top of it so that the village did not lose that as a parking surface. So I could send you that, but I think you should just know that that exists.
Yeah, and in these like urbanized settings, we're just, trying to find any space to create more conveyance, right? So when we looked at it, from an aerial view, we saw this like parking area that's built on the floodplain. It's probably built on the floodplain, right? And we did recommend that as a possibility to lower it 3 to 5 feet, I believe, to inundate during a flood and provide that additional conveyance. And it could be, it's really up to the town how they would like to utilize that space once it's lowered. It could be converted into a park if it gets too low that it can't be accessible by vehicles. But at least there is some benefit from using that space to provide additional conveyance during a flood. So that is good news. I think that is something that should be implemented at some point, hopefully.
Yeah, Miguel, the Army Corps, project manager, Bethany, she knows about it. And they're not opposed to it.
So
Okay.
this is now a final report,
That's correct, yeah.
and so what is the next step, to the extent that you're aware, what happens to this set of recommendations next, or is that not part of your jurisdiction?
Unfortunately, what happens next is that basically we did our best in this report. So, you're able to grab a lot of the figures, copy and paste it, and basically apply for the different grants. Unfortunately, we're not involved at this point. This is kind of the end, like just presenting the final recommendations and handing out the report. At least that's as far my involvement is.
Right, so just to confirm that, Jerry, this report now is in front of the village board, or
Yeah.
what's the next step?
It is, so
From our standpoint.
part of this report, to their credit, SLR included funding resources throughout the state. And this report was paid for by the DEC. I knew about this report many months before it started, because the assistant commissioner at the DEC called me up and said, just so you know, we're doing this, which of course was after, item. But, just so you know, we're doing this, and then, and Miguel and Mark, presented this report in a draft, we had a little work session, I guess, in between, and then they made the final report. So that's why Karen's on here too. Karen Franco is on here, works for Millennium Strategies, who's our grant writer. Because some of these items could get expensive, are gonna be expensive, but if, and I know that the state has a lot of resources to be able to provide that to us, provide some money to us. If the board, and Lou is on the phone here, if the board has the appetite to tackle it, my staff and I, we're willing to do it. And go after it with Millennium's help and all of that stuff, but this is the extent of where FLR stops, David. Right here, they present the report and that's it.
So my read of the report was just, and then Miguel, correct me if I'm wrong, this is really more conceptual as opposed to engineering. I mean, a lot of work still has to get done in terms of what exactly is gonna be done with each property and the mix of dredging versus bridge replacement. I noticed that you're recommending replacing around 10 bridges, and if I did the math correctly, it could cost up to $100 million. So this is not cheap stuff. And so that really raises the question, maybe it's time to move to Taryn now, talking about how we're gonna get all this money to do all this great stuff.
Right, and so some of the things that Miguel and Mark presented were, of course, understanding the fact that in some areas in our community, whether we like it or not, whether we want to talk about it or not, there may have to be acquisition of properties at some point in order for us to save other houses while we're moving other people out. But what we're also trying to do is take a look at the recommendations that SLR made as far as the bridges, because a couple of our bridges, if they do go away, we basically just create dead end streets. And that's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? It may be for the 12, 15, 20 people who live there that they're inconvenienced, but there's a lot of dead end streets in the village of Mamaroneck, especially because we have a train line that goes through. So the truth is that some of the bridges that may be planned to be replaced or demolished and then rebuilt, it may be cheaper to just demolish and let the river pretty much take that course. So that's what was the benefit in our mind and on the engineering side of the SLR report, that it gave us choices. It gave us some choices to kind of figure out how we want to do it and where we want to go. Miguel, do you have the page on your slide presentation of the grant opportunities?
I believe it's at the very end. But yeah, thank you for talking about kind of what our role was here. Yeah, it's very, there was some engineering analysis. We did do hydraulic modeling. So, and using that hydraulic modeling, we tried to provide some sort of prioritization for these projects based on our findings. So, and kind of like the sequencing that we recommend be done, but we weren't able to get into like the fine nitty-gritty details of exactly how a certain floodplain should be configured, because there are questions of property acquisitions, who wants to volunteer for those to have their property removed and converted to that floodplain area. So there's very specific details that unfortunately are outside the scope of this project, but would require a greater kind of a more detailed engineering analysis to that looks at cost benefit and looking at that type of analysis. I don't think I have funding, unfortunately, here. Sorry.
So that's okay. I'll share that with Taryn and the board. But there's one thing. So let's use the Jefferson Avenue parking lot, the village portion of the right. Yeah. So what we talked about before the SLR report actually is confirmed in the SLR report, right? So those are the things that we want to move ahead with. Those are the things that we have smart people like SLR and Miguel and Mark to demonstrate to us that, hey, we're not crazy, right? We do have some rationale to this. So that's what's good about the report. I'm going to try to use this report as we continue on down the road of doing projects and looking at different areas. we're gonna turn over the village to the Army Corps when they start coming in. And they have they have an 88 to $100 million project that they want to execute here. And some of the information that is in here, they have this report as well. So they're gonna have to look at it, and we're gonna have to kind of work together on any tweaks and changes that we make with the Army Corps. It's a little touchy with them because they have this, mandate, and they have to get the plan done according to basically how it was presented. But we appreciate the SLR report. The other thing that I want to just real quick, I want to demonstrate that the SLR report did not include too many, or didn't include other areas that we want to focus on. So what it does is it helps us kind of focus on those areas now with other studies, while we don't have to worry about the stuff that SLR has provided to us. We didn't pay a dime for this report, and we appreciate it. And these guys are always at our, at our disposal to be able to help us with this stuff. So we really appreciate what the EC did. But Miguel, I don't want to keep you for too long. I want Taryn, and then we can start to talk about Taryn. But if there's anything that comes up and we have some questions, you okay if we email you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want, I can stick around for any other questions if you have specific questions about the recommendations that we made, and how those can, how funding can hopefully make those be realized.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could stick around, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
It sounds like the additional funding is not what would pay for the Army Corps. This is in addition to the Army Corps' efforts.
That's exactly right.
And we are tweaking it, and any tweaks would be paid via some other form, like grants and all that stuff.
Potentially, or Army Corps shifting some money around to get those tweaks done.
And we can direct that process effectively, or are we kind of at the mercy of the Army Corps?
We're kind of at the mercy of the Army Corps because I get to do what I want around here and they don't get to do what they want. But we can work together to kind of plan. And what it is it's an effort that all of us, would kind of work at. Flood committee, this committee, and of course, the Board of Trustees.
So basically, there's a plan that was already approved, and that's what was funded. But when we went to them last year with this proposal, we tried to stay within their boundaries. But it was quite a large change, actually, but we stayed within their, their edges. And they seem to be open to it, that they view it as a tweak. So it's not like a change, it's still the same plan. It's kind of, there's a kind of a fudgy area. Wouldn't you agree there?
I agree.
Yeah.
And the tweak has to make it better. You can't make it worse.
Oh, yeah.
More tweaking-ish.
This is more, so Miguel and Mark's SLR report helps justify the tweaks that we're asking for. That's what's great about it. Timing is working out really well for us. Love it. So thank you, Miguel, really appreciate it. This is Taryn Cronco. She is our grant writer from Millennium Strategies. She works on all sorts of different grants. Right now, we're doing a downtown, what's the DRI, downtown initiatives?
Yep, downtown revitalization initiative.
Revitalization initiatives, that's for, some other things. But this group here in front of you, Taryn, is the Committee for the Environment. And like I said before, very active, very productive committee. And they go after things like food scrap recycling, all the way to trying to fix the flooding. So they're very broad-based. So if anyone has questions or follow-up questions, we've talked about Taryn before and Millennium and what they do for us. And we've shared some emails, but I don't know how you want to, David, how you want to approach Taryn with, questions from the board.
Well, let's start with the one question, and that is, are you familiar with the SLR report and some of the recommendations? And if so, to what extent can you see funding opportunities to do some of the work that they're recommending?
Yes, I have not seen the report. If Miguel would be able to share with me, I'd be more than happy to take a look through and use that to find relevant grant opportunities. It's going to depend if there might be some opportunities through the state as well as FEMA. There's a few coming to the top of my head, but it's gonna depend if between opportunities for the pre-development work, planning, engineering, things like that, or if you're looking for funding to actually carry out the recommendations, the actionable projects. That's gonna heavily weigh the types of grant programs that we can seek funding for.
Well, I think the first step would probably be, Joey, to send Taryn a copy of the SLR report, and
Yeah,
have her take a
will,
look
yeah.
at it,
Sure.
and get her starting to think about where some of this money can come from.
Do we have a list? I guess I have to admit, I haven't read the report. Is there a list of recommendations and then the board would approve doing all of them or some of them? And then the grant writing would be targeting the projects that were approved by the board?
We haven't gotten into that, there's a list of recommendations throughout the report. And at the end, they kind of help us with some of the, identifying some of the areas that we could, some of the agencies we can go to try to get some funding for it. So, we'll work on that. We promise you, we'll work on that with Taryn and my staff, Courtney and I will work on that. But there's also other areas that, that Karen can help us with, as far as when things come up, right? So she alerts us, hey, this opportunity is coming up, it's, $2 million, your deadline's pretty quick and all of that. So what I can do is I can share those opportunities with the board as well. But it'll be more staff and Taryn when it comes to finding this kind of money for these kinds of things.
I will predict, though, the process is not gonna work the way you suggested.
Well, I'm just asking, what do you need from
No,
us?
so I
Oh,
think,
sorry.
well, I think part of what is gonna drive what is done is where there's grant money available.
Yep.
So we need to know where the grant money is before we decide
So
what
that's
to do.
where she,
That's where Karen comes in.
Yeah, that's when Taryn comes in, right? She comes in.
to turn it around where we can get funding
Right.
the easiest to go for that.
Right, so Millennium tracks for us available grant funding and see if it fits our needs, if it fits into something that we're trying to do. Just like the downtown revitalization initiative, we tried that. When was the last time we did it, Taryn? 4 years ago?
2019.
Yeah, 4 years ago. And then over COVID, it didn't happen, but now we're interested in getting back to it. So we want to get back to it, and a lot of the items are pretty much the same as they were in 2019.
So one thing that you can help us with, Tara, is moving beyond the SLR report, which you haven't seen. What are some of the grant opportunities or that you're working on right now that relate to what we're doing, to the extent you know what we're doing on other projects? For example, we have an issue with food scrap recycling. We know there's funding available for that. And there are other things that we do as a committee for the environment that are very sensitive to what grant money is available. I'm curious as to what you're working on now that would be of interest to us.
So we actually, funny you mentioned, we are actually working on a food scraps recycling grant right now that's due early next month. I believe that the main focus of the project is purchasing the truck for door pickup of the food scraps. But more relevant to flooding, probably the most presently relative grant is the New York State HCR Resilient Investments through Support and Capital. This is the RISC program. It just opened recently. It has a deadline of November 1st. We just shared it with the village earlier this week. This is for pre-development activities. So this is going to be for planning, architecture, engineering, feasibility studies, those kinds of projects. And I can reshare that with the general committee address if that seems like it may be something of interest.
Yeah, and you said resiliency, is that the general topic?
It's the RISC program. It stands for resilient investments through support and capital. So this
So-
is for, the planning of flood mitigation projects. Such as, engineering studies, feasibility studies, things like that.
That would actually allow us to fund the next step. Taking the SLR report with the Army Corps of Engineers plan in some combination and figuring out, the engineering behind it. To the extent that it hasn't already been figured out. Am I thinking about that correctly?
You are, so resilient homes and communities, and we're in contact with Lori DeBoard from, she used to be from the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery, and now they've merged with another one, with another agency, but they say that, Resilient Homes and Communities, an office of the Housing Trust Fund Corporation, expects to make up to $4 million available to about 20 units of local government, 20 municipalities, to implement flood mitigation projects in Dutchess, Nassau, Orange, Rockland, Suffolk, and Westchester counties. Westchester County has been determined by HUD to be the most impacted and distressed, and therefore units of local government in Westchester County, us municipalities, will be awarded 80% or $3,200,000 of the funds available. So we're designated because we got hit pretty hard, but we're designated to receive 80% of that. So the better job, if we do a better job, we'll get more money. And so some of the stuff is planning grants, right? Funds available directly to eligible applicants to manage planning and pre-development activities, as Karen said. And then there's technical assistance awards. So consultants that Resilient Homes will work with us closely to coordinate planning, pre-planning, pre-development, and capital fundraising activities. We don't necessarily do fundraising, but we look for funds. So it's flood mitigation projects that we're seeking to implement, as well as services and activities needed to be able to apply for these funds. So we're definitely going after this money. But it's not for actual, shovels and excavators in the ground. It's for the stuff before that, which costs a significant amount.
Expensive.
It's expensive stuff. They're soft costs, but they hit you hard. Yeah. Yeah. Did I do that right, Taryn?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, and we are in contact with Lori, who's kind of like our inside, she's the assistant director of the Office of Resilient Homes and Communities. So we're in constant contact with her. In addition to that, there are some homes in our community that are right along the river that have been impacted significantly, and we want to try to get them, for the individuals who rent these, who own the homes, are interested in raising them up, right? Creating that parking or unusable space underneath, so that they won't be impacted by first floor flooding like we experienced in this. And Lori, as well as Taryn, will help us identify those costs, because we're looking at, on a small home, 100, and on a big home, like $200,000 to lift up a house. So
And that would be very gratified.
grant, and then we're interested as a village to try to help with that as well. So sometimes there's a match of like 75 to 25%, right? So you get 75%. We're very interested, and a couple of trustees are pushing me to do this, is to try to come up with some funding that we have to kind of cover 25% or a portion of the 25%, to make it easier on these property owners who have to pay flood insurance and all these other, they have mortgages and they have kids and they have a lot of expenses. Lou, you still on? You might have gone to sleep.
Can I just throw out as a side note, because what you're talking is still the planning and the pre-shovel time. That is beyond, I think, the scope of most of us, but when you get into actionable items and finishing bits, feel free to, I say, consider us a resource.
Yeah.
To contribute to any of the finer grained details that we can add.
So
as a
Chris,
village.
so the floodplain?
Jerry, I'm still here. I
Yeah.
can't find the phone.
No problem. The floodplain, right? The floodplain that you showed us, right? Those would be significant areas for us to be able to convert into recreation spaces. if we created those spaces. And if everyone knows Plaza, right, I think Kate might have mentioned suburban and the other side. I'm not thinking of suburban, and I'm not thinking of people on the other side of the Sheldrake. I'm thinking about Plaza. I'm thinking about eliminating Plaza
I love that.
That's the
Right.
street, yeah,
as a street.
Widen the
making
river in that direction.
To widen the river and create more capacity. And then all those streets in Washingtonville become dead end streets. I
Yes.
get it, but they're dead end streets. It is what it is.
Well, it becomes quieter, doesn't it?
Right, and so, so it's a residential neighborhood, and that's what it is. But there are opportunities out there. The problem with us is the fact that, we really need to put, we need to do the studies, and we also need a game plan to try to get money for this. Because the board can only do so much. I mean, this is we need a new village hall, we need a lot of other things, and so we need to try to capitalize on that 3 million or 30 million or 50 million that the state might have that, burning a hole in their pocket. We want to take that money away from them and do these projects. So that's why we need Taryn, and that's why we're relying on the SLR report. That's how it kind of links together for us. It links together for us. Then from there, it could be committee work that does the beautification and does the,
So one of the things, just picking up on what Christie said, and this is a question for Karen and Miguel too, is we consider ourselves a resource. We like to think of ourselves as a resource for both the board and for our consultants. If there are things that we can do that would be helpful in you doing your job, you should please let us know.
Yeah, so David, to that end, right? Taryn earlier this week asked me, maybe it was yesterday or Friday, she asked me to start getting letters of support for the downtown revitalization initiative, right? So I'm going after a couple of agencies to get those letters, but resolutions from this board, letters, from this board, probably a resolution is more appropriate. Helps strengthen, and I don't want to take Taryn's thunder away, but it helps strengthen our application significantly.
Okay,
So
you
those are the ones-
present us with a, a draft resolution or something like that, and we'll take.
You hear that, Karen? Whenever you need a resolution, they're ready to go.
Yeah, great,
So-
thank you.
I just kind of want to understand a little bit. Excuse me.
No.
I apologize.
It's not done.
Well, there's these huge projects that are taking place across the watershed with, $100 million and giant things happening. Within that space, we've already conceptually mapped out a linear park that, we have made one park, we're looking at another to grab little pieces of land, to make parks out of them and to find a way to link them all together.
Yep.
So we honestly don't want to just come in at the end, to throw a few flowers on it. We would like to be as involved as possible, in the planning stages
Sure.
as well. I think there's, significant expertise here to be helpful there. So, it's a little bit of a kind of a chicken and the egg,
I get it.
and it's being driven by flood control, not by environmental issues.
Correct.
But there's, growing understanding that doing things in an environmentally correct way is helpful for flood control. So,
That's,
just kind of-
there's a lot of money for environmental improvement in the bond. It's $4.2 billion
Billion.
of state bond.
It's a
Act
ridiculous
money.
amount of money.
So, to the extent that we legitimately can make this an environmental project, and I think it is, not just flood control, there's a whole other funding source that we can tap.
And I think that might be maybe a real good topic at a future meeting, right? At a meeting to really talk about that and see what's in that. That 4.2, is it 4.2? I think it's 4.2 billion. That was passed.
4.2 billion. You're talking about the bond act, right?
Yeah, bond act, yep.
Yeah, 4.2 billion. And yeah, I mean, also it focuses on like what, New York State's kind of designates as these like disadvantaged communities as well, which if in the report, we kind of break it down into that way or mention if certain of these, if specific HRAs or high risk areas are designated as such. So there is a good opportunity to like synergize all these, these opportunities with the bond act and to, improve and become, more resilient and land conservation and even recreation, which it funds. So that's definitely a good funding source for a lot of these recommendations that we're making in this report.
Yeah, at least 2 out of the 4 or 5 HRAs, yeah, are designated low and moderate income areas. So that helps with that. That's what you're talking about, right?
Well, that's just another way to get more funding.
It is. You had a question?
So well, a couple of things. First, my feeling is that whenever we hear about a grant opportunity, it's kind of at the last minute.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, we can't action it or do anything to help prove it. You know, so currently some of us are working on a climate action plan. Be great to be able to talk with Karen about these are the actions you can get funding for quite easily. And okay, we'll include that in the plan rather than just sort of a list that we hope will get action.
Yeah.
And then I mean, the other thing that came to mind was the presentation we had about the cycleway. You know, he was very focused on getting grants to do planning this year. So that when it comes to the redoing of Boston Post Road, there's a plan in place. So, you know, I don't know if you know, Karen has looked into any of that stuff.
We have, so it's revolving, that kind of funding is on a revolving cycle. You're talking about the bike path. The bike path,
Bike
right?
path.
The bike path. So he was at our last meeting when we had the presentation about Holstead Avenue.
Yeah.
And, you know, Holstead Avenue was one of those items that we talked about, but we couldn't really put a bike path. But what he did suggest, what was great, was that with those bump outs that we have, like near Kate's house, right? We have those bump outs, to make them flat, or to make them level with the street and use bollards, but that the bikes can go through it instead of having to go into the one lane and then come back out. So stuff like that, he's involved with, but I think I may have said this to this board at that point, that there's only a certain amount of bandwidth that we have to be able to do that, right? So we want to try to do everything, but involved in this flood mitigation, dredging, all of that stuff, it's kind of hard for us to spread ourselves that thin. That's really.
But that's where I think, to Kate's point, if some of us can do some of this work, and it may or may not be practical, but then I think we'd all be willing to give it a go.
So we had an example this summer where we had someone in my office working right outside my office doing CSC work, right? She was amazing. She was fantastic.
Yeah.
And she was able to do with my help and just kind of a couple of questions, Liam. So if we have someone kind of interning, which of course I can pay a little bit, or someone kind of maybe focused on that, it could work for us. That formula with Michaela really worked really well for us.
Yeah. So we have later on the agenda, if we get to it.
Yeah.
A discussion about Oprah, which is it's a group in Mamaroneck High School. The acronym is Original Research for City Action. And they have a bunch of students, there are like 80 students in this 4-year program that are anxious to be involved with groups like us.
Okay.
They're already involved with the town.
Mhm.
We've never, as the village, has not actually accessed these people who we met.
They hit us up for 5,000 last meeting. They hit us up for $5,000 last meeting.
Well, I think we should get some payback.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But there's a teacher, by the name of Joe Liberty.
Yeah, oh, I agree.
Who was great, whom Ellen Silver and I met with last week. And they're ready to help us if we have some projects with them. So.
Good.
He sends us volunteers to events.
Yeah.
He sends us volunteers
So-
to events.
So there's one thing that I want
But, and I tried to lure them to the village, my group. But it's very student driven, so that's like, we have to like lure them into being interested in the village.
But we have
Yeah,
been
we're
very
gonna
interested
have
in
fun.
projects.
We know, that's what I told them.
So-
We let these two go.
Yeah, I think we should.
The one thing that I admit to is the fact that we definitely have, resources like Karen, and Miguel was a resource that we continue to tap, but I think we may lack the flow of information, right, to people, like Karen, who work for us and look for stuff like that. So I kind of have to figure that out. Eventually it'll come to me, but I have to figure out how we can do things, to be able to funnel them or objectives to our grant writers, so our grant writers can either look for items that are available or keep that in mind. I think I need to do a little bit more work on it.
I mean, I would just like to say that as far as this Greenway project, I'd like to be very much kept in the loop. We were advised by Sarah Powell from Sea Grant to try to hustle and get an application in for the New York State Consolidated Grant. So over the summer, I was away, but I pushed that to try to get Dan, who'd worked with us in the past, to bring in Millennium to make that happen. But it didn't, I couldn't get any traction on it.
Okay.
So, you know, I can work on these things, but that we would have had 20 days to do it. It might have been enough time. But so that, you know, there's missed opportunities. And I think it's fine to have kids, but, you know, if you want, you know, a grown-up who can put some time in a concentrated fashion to move it out the door, you know, I would like to be in that conversation with Taryn and with you, Jerry.
Okay.
So I think we should bring this part of the agenda to a close and
Okay.
let Miguel and Tara enjoy the rest of the evening.
Yeah.
And thank you very much. Thank you so much for your presentation.
I'll talk to you a little bit about maybe some ideas of bringing some volunteers into our circle. All right, and see what we can do.
Great.
Okay,
Thanks to both of you.
thanks, Darren, thanks. Miguel.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Take care. Bye-bye.
It's worth creating another meeting if those people who are interested just on this topic. On the, you know, grants
Yeah.
and finding
Also,
funding for
yeah.
ideas, you know, that kind of business, because there's this matchmaking that needs to be done, and, you know, we can't just expect you to do it, honestly. I mean, this is
No.
my feeling.
Well,
No, if you ask me to do it, I'm gonna ask someone else to do it,
But
but that's just how it is, right?
Well,
So
but there must be something that we could do to alleviate that.
we have to kind of work on that, because it keeps coming up at meeting after meeting where that's kind of like our, you know, where we're missing things, and I want to, I mean, it's really truly amazing having Michaela in my office, you know, 18, 20 hours a week working on CFTE stuff. I mean, it was amazing.
Not
Yeah.
to mention the amount of work that she did for the festival.
Right, so
She did a ton.
if we can tap into Oprah people, I mean,
What
they
did they want $5,000 for? What are they do to that group?
wanna teach operators participatory budgeting. Participatory budgeting.
So I think Dina's idea is a good one. Maybe Jerry, why don't you give some thought to how we can structure a better form of information? Maybe we'll have a separate meeting.
Yeah.
Devoted to that, you know, people who on this committee that want to do that can be part of, but we don't have time to do it in the regular.
Yeah, it's a huge conversation, and it's so important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the core of what we're really trying to do here.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
and I don't, you know, my feeling is just, we should be able to, or somebody should be able to help you, and you don't need to carry this yourself.
Yeah,
It's true.
does Taryn have a database of grants? But
She does, and
every year, I'm assuming a lot of these things come back up.
you know, but what happens is, and if they come up, right, they don't know if they're gonna get funded, then when they get
Right.
funded, they got this 45-day window or this 30-day window. We meet every
Okay.
30 days, they got this 45-day window. So she'll send an email to me saying, I'm like, I don't know if I have the bandwidth to kind of
Yeah.
reassign everyone for that 45 type of day. Right now, this downtown revitalization initiative is for like $6 million for us to do certain projects, build another parking garage in the industrial area, things like that. So I jumped into it because it's big money. But then there's small grants that are available that are just hard for us to kind of prioritize.
No, I get it,
Yeah, well,
and
One takes a lot of work.
And the grant that did come across us would have required the Board of Trustees to make a resolution.
Yep.
And it was like, well, there's no way that's gonna happen in 28 days. So,
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. I get it, but
Yeah,
How about a grant SWAT team?
yeah,
And some of us are in that,
yeah, it could
you
work.
know, and then you're like, guys, opportunity, you know,
No, it could
find the
work.
time, sit down
So I
and do
think, I
something.
think the action item is Jerry's gonna give some thought to it, then when he's ready to present something to us, he'll let us know, and we'll have a meeting of people who wanna do this.
Yeah, I need to think about it. I need to
Yeah.
figure it out. I need to talk to a couple of people in my office, coordinating, hearing, people who I can rely on to say, hey, I'm gonna assign you certain projects. Courtney is phenomenal, so,
So,
but Taylor was,
so this is really interesting stuff, we spend a lot of time on it, we have a lot of stuff. To go through between now and 9:30, so what I'd like to do is, unless somebody has a compelling reason to talk about, the recent events or the upcoming events, let's just make that really quick agenda item. And move through that to some of the more substantive stuff. We had a great thing with the campaign for energy smart homes.
Right.
Yeah,
Good,
good.
Very good.
Lot of information.
well done, Deb.
yeah.
About
Eight people, I think.
That's good.
It's a good program, and people learned a lot. People were not all from the village, there were a lot of people from all over.
There were people sharing it on Instagram, Sustainable Westchester shared it with everyone, so I'm sure
It
they
was on
picked up other
NYSERDA,
people.
it was on the clean action. What is it, climate action week,
Yeah.
business week, it was on that site, so it was, we had somebody from Yonkers, even the Bronx came, so that's right, it was interesting.
So does anybody want to talk about any of the upcoming events? There's the Monarch Festival, there's your Pear Cafe, Rockland Park, pocket ribbon cutting, fall cleanup event. Anybody want to talk about any of
And then
those?
we have the Monarch Festival
They're-
coming up on the
They're all,
third.
they're all important.
Is anyone missing that's not accounted? for?
Yeah, I was just looking around. I think everyone is now signed up.
No, I have, my son.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, we did see your son. We saw your son.
But yes, so everyone.
No, I keep saying, when are you signed
going to
up?
be
So I'll
there
sign
in
up with you.
some- Are you in town
No,
on the 30th?
no.
We have we're about to hit, I think, the RCPs that we had last year, and we're still 20 days out.
So we're about 1,100.
Right.
1,200, I didn't look today, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't look today.
That's a lot of people.
David, my staff comment was last year, these butterfly people are out of control. That's exactly what Jason said.
You know what, I'd rather have more butterfly people than.
No, you won't be, they're butterfly people. But we did make the milkweed the official flower.
I heard, that's really amazing.
Toxic to spotted lanternfly. which is
Yes.
an
And
animal.
thank you for your.
Specifically
I
butterfly.
think that was what put it over the edge.
It did, I said, hey, there's something else I need to tell you, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's
It's
the orange
amazing.
one,
Orange.
orange, yay.
Was it orange or swamp?
Just like
Butterflies.
monarch, butterfly, you know, kind.
Okay, so do we, is there any other
Besides trying,
upcoming events we wanna talk
tell us
about?
what we can do for you and then.
I would just need everyone
We
like
need-
there,
do we
like
need
show
any
up
other
and find, we actually need a couple more like adult volunteers.
Adult
So
volunteers,
actually, if
what?
anyone has like a friend they could bring, we need like the clicker, we need like 2 people. to
We
be
need adults who
counting the
can
people
count, who can
as they
click.
come in.
Okay.
So anyone.
I know that sounds crazy, but we need someone just to stand at the
1,200
entrance and
clicks is
click.
gonna be a lot.
In the back you had a student, well, in the front, we had Ellen's friend, we had an
Yes,
adult,
that's
so there were a lot of people up front.
We have enough
Oh,
people
we
for
have
the
kids.
CFTE table.
Not for like talk to a gardener or just pick out the seeds kind of thing, no, we probably could use, and the compost bins. Yeah. I don't know,
We
but
can get those for the
Tom,
festival.
I have in my office.
Both the guys that get back to
And
me.
whatever happened with the collecting of the money for that, like how do we do that?
I
So I'm
still-
gonna be there,
I still
so
have the
I
notebook.
don't go to too many, because I have a house in Jersey, but I'm gonna be there for that weekend. So I can handle the money part of it,
Oh, sweet.
and they can talk to me,
Are you
because I'm
gonna be at
like
the
a
table?
partner.
Great.
Oh, okay,
I'm
I still
supposed to
have
know
the
all that.
receipt book and $27
Yeah, I know,
from,
yeah.
it's still in my house.
I know,
I just never bring it with
don't
me.
tell Robert. in Genito, but I could.
Okay, well, anyway, I still have it. It's still in my CFTE bag going to events.
Megaphones and cash boxes.
Oh, that's an interesting thing. I like megaphones.
Megaphones are a good idea.
Crowd
Yeah.
control, everybody go
You
right.
do
They
need
come
that.
in handy.
You need that. To
I-
tell
and
people this is
clipboards,
happening now.
Yeah.
I would say the only thing that I think is worth bringing up that Jen painted these two amazing things that I would like to rally to install one of them in the village permanently. They're large plywood monarch wings and you stand in front of them and take a picture.
Oh, so I thought we were putting them on the mayor.
No, you stand in front of them. Oh, we should.
They're like over 6 feet tall.
Oh, that's great.
And they're.
But they deserve like a permanent home.
Railroad
So
under
people
the
can come take
bridges,
selfies.
underneath, like underneath.
But they're made out of wood.
Like,
If I put them outside near the Marine Education Center, where people can pose and take pictures,
I
right?
know, she has a little,
Under
like
a
for a
porch
porch
there.
there, she does have a porch.
Should do that, or,
It's all, I mean, we got paint donated from the village paint supply in Larchmont, they gave me a ton of paint. All up exterior, so they're all painted, like maybe if we installed them permanently outside, I might put some sort of like varnish or something to
Okay.
conceal them.
that's what,
But
that's what I'm thinking.
other than that, it's all exterior paint and,
Okay.
I mean, I'm no pro, but I think it should be okay.
Yeah, we can install them, we can have Parks Department install them, you guys pick a spot and we'll install them.
Like
So
before the
great.
festival, so like go get varnish and crack.
Like in a day, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
deserve a home. I mean,
Yeah.
people will come there and take photos with them.
Is that gonna be Monarch? Are we planting?
Oh, there's gonna be a milkweed garden, yeah.
No, it would be in the park.
It's close to the other one. It's close to the other one that we're.
Where could they go? Like what?
That's where the.
Come up with a couple of, just snap pictures, send them to me, is this okay, is this okay? Come up with a few choices,
Mhm.
and then I'll have my staff make sure that they're comfortable with it.
It would be cool if they were
So they're
close
like
to the
mountains.
garden.
It should be close to the
Yeah,
garden.
okay.
It should be close to the garden.
I'm okay with that.
Nice.
We'll get them up before the event.
Thanks, David, moving along, David. go
Okay,
ahead.
sorry,
Okay.
sorry, that was worth the
So
install.
one thing I'd like to just quickly do, and that is, Ellen Silver brought our attention, my attention to the zero waste events policy. Which she sent me some materials, I think I actually included them with the minutes. And I'd like to make, propose a resolution that the village, implement a zero waste event policy. Incorporating these ideas, so that when we have events like the Monarch Festival, we use recyclable things.
Can I just ask,
compostable-
I have a question about that though, like, what do you do when you have outside vendors though? I'm just curious, like, if it's a village event,
Inform suppliers of your zero waste approach upfront. Use agreements to avoid excessive packaging.
okay.
Find alternative suppliers if needed.
Oh, boy.
And is this like a mandate or a
No, no,
suggestion?
the resolution is that we recommend that the Village of Merrimack adopt a zero waste events policy to be implemented to the extent practicable.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Good idea.
So
Great part.
I make that as a motion.
Yeah.
Clarify that for me, I'm not following.
So you remember at the state, Lou, if you go to a state park, if you bring it in, take it out type of thing? You don't leave anything behind, right? So read some of the things that.
So
that would
some
be
of the
pertinent.
things that are included is provide tap water as an eco-friendly alternative to bottled. For indoor events, opt for reusable plates, cutlery, tablecloths that are disposable. For outdoor events, get compostable utensils and plates.
Mhm.
And there's a list of sources. Minimize food waste by getting the right amount of meals for the guest count.
Mhm.
Not so complicated. Cut packaging waste by using bulk dispensers or larger packs. For items like coffee, sugar, cotton.
Sorry to jump back 1 second, which is a very thing. One of the things that we at the Butterfly Festival wanted to do was to collect compost, but I know that weight is an issue, so we had recommended maybe bringing some of our green pails. But it's not really the best thing.
That's not a solution, that's
Do
like.
you
know,
have any ideas
I
on
think
what
it's a
we could
future
do so that we could use that as an opportunity?
To bring compost, to bring food scraps there?
No, to just the food scraps that are like the food truck food.
Why
goes
can't
into
you
a
have
compost
a
bin.
garbage can, a recycling can, and a can for?
That's what we
for-
were
A garbage can for
suggesting.
food scraps.
Yeah, that's in there.
Jean,
Okay,
well, no, but I'm saying.
We can do it.
it's a picture.
Yeah, just,
Yeah, James was a little worried, I think.
They were worried about the weight.
Yeah, I understand that. We'll put it on the back of the pickup.
I
It'll be
have
But-
very large compost bags that I can bring.
So we have a pickup truck with a power lift gate, so we don't have an issue with the weight.
Oh.
So we won't have a
Cause
problem.
I think we
So I'm
have
just
lovely
emailing
high
you.
school
Yeah,
students
email
who
me and
wanna
I'll
teach
direct
people
it.
about
So Lou, it's
composting.
it's basically trying to think of any way and every way. That you could reduce waste down to zero. That's what it's all about. Lou.
Yes.
And I think the eco-friendly village can relate to that.
Yeah, he renamed us, by the way.
The
We're not the
I
friendly-
saw that.
Yeah, so the eco-friendly village.
So,
Very
there's been a motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Alright,
So we'll
always voting unanimously. Results never, everybody gets.
Yeah, I think next door has, I think the town of Mamaroneck already has. But I've been to retirement parties at the town of Mamaroneck, and it's all multiple stuff and separating everything out and all that. Yeah,
Kate, you're on, Greenway.
Just, I sent everybody an email earlier, so I wouldn't have much to say here. Everything's moving along. We're reading at Rockland, we need people to help, we're planting. Mandy got 192 plants. Jerry just promised me.
They're a little less,
list
but
of
we're just paying
shrubs.
shipping, village is paying shipping.
So, it's all coming together, and then this is, just look this over when you have time, and I'll discuss this with you, Jerry, in more detail.
Yep.
A more specific site plan for the Nostrand area that we already put in, we already, begun this. We did all that stream side work, but now I want to address the upper level and how to do it. So that's what this is. And the plan basically, Jerry, is for up there, at the top of the Nostrand area where it's gravel and sand.
Yep.
To not fight that, to say, okay, look, there's already gravel and sand. Give us more gravel and sand. It doesn't matter. That'll be what you walk on.
okay.
And we'll put in planters, and I happened to meet village carpenter and who lives in that neighborhood. His name is Yusuf.
Yeah.
And I asked him if I didn't actually realize that, and he said that they could build that.
Correct.
So maybe over the winter,
Mhm.
we could work on that, and I could ask him to build these.
So you
Large
said build
planters.
docks for us?
Excuse me?
You said builds docks for us, so.
Yeah.
Alright,
So these are big wooden things with
Yeah.
treated lumber
Uh-huh.
that we'll have installed
Yep.
at Nostrand. Get dirt into them, and then we'll plant into them. That way we're not, it's not it's a different environment than Rockland.
And he lives on Lester, he lives in that
Yes,
neighborhood.
yes, and
He's
his
one of
wife
the
has
houses that
already,
wants to raise.
okay, his
Yeah.
wife has already, helped us a little bit on this.
She's the art teacher at MAS.
Yeah, so the idea is to
Okay.
get more volunteers in the neighborhood involved also.
Okay,
But, his feeling was that this is a very underserved neighborhood. There's very little open space, and so we're bringing that to them. And then it's another little, we'll ask then Lou for it to be made into a park at some point. And then, these are the little links in the chain that
It's like
we're gonna,
Monopoly.
that we're
You're building,
gonna
you're
do
building.
more to them. And then with, this plan and the rest of it, find a way to pull it all together.
Well, it's village property, why wouldn't you?
bounce out, done.
There you go. Well, there's a
Wait,
piece
okay.
that's somebody else's that we have to get an easement.
Well,
on.
that's
So-
what it is.
But anyway, enough, so I'm done.
So but the next element of this, which is related, is the I-95 flood mitigation. I think we have a call Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday, there's
And
a
I'm
meeting
not
at
sure I got
11:45.
the link, but I'll be on it if I get a link.
Haven't gotten. the-
Everyone was on the invite.
There hasn't been a Zoom that I got, a Zoom invite.
Okay, so I'll check. This is 23 people on the link, on the invite, but I'll make sure. Yeah, if not, I'll ask Todd Gold to resend it. So Todd Gold, Chief of Staff at the Thruway Authority, is setting up a meeting. If some of you may have noticed that there was a crew out there cutting back some weeds and some area, where the trucks are parked now.
Okay.
Opposite that is a
Okay.
depression that I didn't realize because it was kind of tall. So they went in there and they mowed that. Probably in anticipation of our meeting to kind of maybe calm us down. But the reality is, that there are some things that we're gonna have to talk to them about, and then I'll talk to them about. I need the board to do something as far as, allow me to send a letter, or maybe okay the mayor to send a letter, but I think we need to send a letter that's a little bit more
If
forceful.
you take a look at the maps, which I think Katie helped put together.
Yeah,
The contribution of I-95 to our flooding problem is significant.
significant, right?
And they're not, through the authority, are not being good citizens.
No, they're not. They want to be. And Lisa Urban, who's in Steve Otis's office, you know, was kind of apprehensive about, because I make them apprehensive about the meeting, but I told her, look, you know, we just have people who have valid points, and the Thruway has to, you know, justify what they're doing. So Lisa said she was going to convey that to
It's
them.
really low hanging fruit.
I think so.
So at that last meeting, we talked about, there was a lot of focus on the circles, the interior spaces. And that was actually before they put all those trucks in there. There's the other round one that is kind of high, that could be lowered. And what didn't come up, and I'm hoping maybe you could raise it as a point. If you remember, there's a triangular space that runs alongside the entranceway, the one that comes down along from Saxon Woods.
Yeah.
And I proposed, it's in the, if you go back and read what I wrote, I proposed that be dug down and made a retention pond for water that comes from Gedney. Because right now, Gedney Pond, if you can visualize it.
I do, it goes into.
Okay, it comes right down into a stream and it meets another stream and it goes underneath 95 and it comes out in Washingtonville in Bernie Camarda's backyard.
Yeah, Ralph and Ellie.
And then it goes underground, but it's a massive amount of water that comes through.
So that underground pipe was just replaced, right?
Yeah,
So
I
we just
mean,
replaced that. pipe.
that's great,
Yeah.
but the thing is, in a flood situation, Gedney can't hold the water and it can't, so, you know, if they diverted some of the water under and took that unused triangle.
Yep.
And made that a retention pond, so that I think is something they could do. They're not parking on it, they don't need it, they're not using
So I'll
it.
pull up the stuff that you provided.
Okay.
We'll share that screen during the meeting.
Okay,
Okay, but we'll be asking for certain things, like for instance, when they're finished with the construction, those trucks move out of the way,
right,
right? We're gonna
Right.
ask for some things there. I'm gonna be asking for the soil, which is on the Jiffy Lube side of
Yes,
the.
yes.
How about that mountain?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
that's
gotta
it.
go, that's gotta go too.
right,
So we'll be asking things like that, but
Right.
I'll be asking the board to give me some authority or maybe
Okay.
have the mayor just send a letter. I think it's more
yeah,
appropriate.
and it's not just grass over the thing, but to actually remove soil and make it into a depression that can absorb water and plant it densely,
There's no doubt that
the way
they
it's
know,
done in Rye.
I think they know
They know
what we're
how
gonna
to
be
do that.
asking, but they know what we're gonna be asking. So let's
Okay.
see if they're ready. Let's see if they're ready.
It's a rain garden,
Yeah, it's a rain
a
garden.
massive rain garden.
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, a rain garden, exactly. Like they have in Rye, and instead we're like downstream in a flooded area with what we have to deal with.
Nice,
Okay,
this is great.
Okay,
that's great. I want to talk, I think the next item on the agenda is leaf blower. Which actually took me a little by surprise at the last board meeting, because
Yeah.
they're further along than I thought they were
Mhm.
in terms of their thinking, but we ought to be able to contribute to the discussion. William, do you want to, are you familiar with where the board is? No, I'm not familiar. So my understanding, I was at the last work session, and what they have proposed is to ban gasoline blowers entirely, but keep the current policy allowing electric blowers from
October 1st to May
October
15th.
30th to May 15th.
No, I think it's October 1st. I think it's
Yeah,
October
right
1st.
now it's
I'm
September
sorry,
30th.
I have a 9:30.
So it's in line with what we
It's-
recommend.
Which we already have that, right?
In
line with the village
We already have that.
Yeah.
for-
That's for gas right now. We just want to take out the gas and put electric.
Right.
In the terminology.
It's happening.
Our attorney had some concerns, but he was able to talk to the board about that.
Drafting.
He hasn't. I don't have it yet in my hands.
Will you send it to us when?
Yeah,
So.
it'll be posted to the agenda.
So, I would like to, at the next session, articulate, if I get a sense from the committee as to what our position is, to articulate our support for this, or any comments that we would want to have on this proposal.
could you synthesize it again? I'm not entirely sure
So
about
right
electric
now-
versus gas.
the law is that you can use gas or electric blowers from October 1st through May 15th. But no blowers from May 15th through September 30th. That's
So
the,
you can use blowers all winter long?
yes,
Yes,
Okay.
that's, yeah.
subject to
If someone-
hours of operation, obviously. But you can use blowers all winter.
Primarily
Actually,
fall cleanup, spring cleanup.
The village
Okay.
of Larchmont, I would like to move closer to the village of Larchmont, which says you can only use even electric for a period of 6 weeks in the spring and 2 months. So the Larchmont allows you to use electric from March 15th to April 30th only, and October 15th to December 15th only. You can't use it at other times.
Mhm.
And eventually, I'd like to move closer to that, in part because one of the things we want to talk about Judge Darrico in a second, but one of the things she said is, and she's sympathetic to the argument that each of the jurisdictions has a different policy. We should try to move closer to the other jurisdiction. So this helps us. It goes part way. But I said when I was actually asked to make a comment during the work session, I said two things. One is we should try to move toward a tri-municipal policy where all the jurisdictions have the same regulations. And the second thing is ultimately we'd like to move to having no leaf blowers at all, which is a little bit idealistic and we may never get there, but the closer we can get to that, the better.
I thought she made a great point in the minutes that I read, that having that lack of noise has, been, the residents love it. That they have quiet with so many people working at home, that it's, been very well received in the village.
So I think we had mirrored policies until Larchmont changed it, right? I think we had the same policies throughout the 3 communities. I think the town still has something similar to ours, but maybe just electric. Like we're trying to go to
No, the town allows you to use electric
all year
once a
long,
year.
12 months out of the year. Oh, so that's it. So that's a big change.
But no gas.
No gas.
No, I didn't even know that
yeah.
about the town. I thought it-
The gas is banned only in the summer. They can use gas and electric all year, except gas is banned during the summer.
And electric is permitted.
Electric's permitted all year round.
And you're right on the line. You can get away with all summer long. with
I'm
electric.
on both,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're right
I
on the line.
apparently live in both. I
Yeah, you
didn't
live in
realize that,
both.
But I live in both.
So we would just, I think the board was comfortable with replacing the gas with the electric.
Right.
I think the board kind of got hung up on what's the effective date of this new change, right? I think the effective date should be next October, right? October 1st, right? Would be all electric. You have to be all electric by next October 1st, 2024. So I didn't want to kind of interrupt because there was a lot of chatter up here. But it's really, up to the board. What Larchmont has done is intelligent because there aren't many landscapers that are working past Christmas Eve, right? And there aren't a lot of landscapers that are working before March 1st. Some may kind of try to start in February, but March 1st is that date. when people go out.
I don't love Larchmont's dates, like, I understand from an environmental perspective with, the exhaust, but from an insect perspective, if you really wanna talk about, like, I don't clean up my yard until like the end of May. Like, you're not doing anything to really further the bigger message. There's a few messages, there's peace and quiet, there's the exhaust, there's so many things, but I'm not in love with their dates, I'm sorry. Like, I would never be out there in March blowing leaves, cause it's like, why did I let the leaves fall and keep them there the whole time just to go kill it all? I mean,
And Mandy, those are absolutely landscaper, as a reformed landscaper,
Yeah, I
they are
know.
absolute landscapers.
They're out in March,
Yeah,
like March 15th, it's like
They're-
all over my
I have
block.
in my calendar remind.
Yeah.
So we can't actually, reinvent the wheel. I think we're being presented with a proposal, we'll be presented with a proposal to keep the current law except eliminate gas entirely, not change the ability to use electric during the winter, which we have, but who uses it? And I think an intelligent comment from us would be, we support what you're proposing to do. Because it's better for the environment, it's not perfect, but it's better, and it gets us closer to the village of Larchmont, which the more consistency we have, the better for everybody. But that ultimately, we would like to see tighter restrictions on when you can use even the electric, and maybe long-term try to move to a mulch-only policy, even though we know that we may never get there and it may be too difficult.
Yeah, it may be hard. The one thing that I can tell you, the decibels on a gas are around 90 to 100. On an electric, they're in the 50s,
Yeah.
50 to 60.
No.
So it's really, I mean, we're cutting it in half, so.
And also, and you can't actually not pay attention to this. There's a social justice issue because all these landscapers are really
yeah.
messed up.
Yep.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, if they're not breathing gas fumes, it's better.
The big problem with it all is the enforcement of it. I mean, when the Woods Day, you're having people practically attacked, you know?
Attacked,
Yeah,
for sure.
so we're gonna
And-
get to Judge Derek.
We'll get to Blitz Day in a second.
But so, do I have I'm gonna make a motion that I be authorized, or anybody else, I mean, everybody can do it.
No, you got it.
It's me.
You got it.
But I would be happy to be the spokesperson for the committee to support in general the direction that the board wants to go, with the idea that we'd like ultimately to see it go a little further.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna be on the agenda for the 26th. It may be on the October 10th agenda, because I don't think the attorney's ready for the rewrite yet. But I'll let you know that, but your meeting won't be until, this will be the meeting you have before October 10th anyway, so.
So I make that as a motion second.
Second.
Discussion. One favor.
So can you just, so it's just changing, eliminating gas,
Eliminate
going to
gas.
electric.
Keeping the same
Same
dates.
And I think the lesson from last one was they did a lot of outreach and education.
Yeah.
Right.
Might wanna
Good
do
news
that
is they've
again.
started it and people are already paying attention. I would have waited for because the entire summer I come back and there's change. From
We-
spring to now,
In Mamaroneck?
yes.
We took the contractor, the landscaper list from Westchester County. It's about 1,200 landscape companies that are licensed in Westchester County. And we pared it down to about 720 local. We kind of expanded that, but we weren't sending letters to Yorktown or Yorktown Heights or Buchanan, right, or Lewisburg. So, and we did a mass mailing. We did a mass mailing demonstrating that, I mean, not demonstrating, sending the law actually to these landscape companies. So we spent time doing that. I'm hoping that got out there. I mean, education is part of it. I'm not sure how much we can educate homeowners, because even Ellen Silver has demonstrated to us that there's a challenge with her landscaper not using the blower and all of that stuff. And I can tell you, from personal experience on my end of it, when we talk about the court and all of that stuff, I can tell you a little bit about what happened and what I saw and what I experienced. So,
The issue that I think you're addressing is who do you target as
Yeah.
the violator? And that was something that
That's what
Judge
she
Derrico mentioned. It was something that was brought up at the work session. Where's the board on that? Is it gonna still apply to the landowner as well?
no, it's gonna be to the individual who's using the blower.
The worker, the user.
So we sent violations with an affidavit. So the way I did it, I went out there. If I saw someone using it, I would put my lights on, stop my white truck, get out, tell them that they can't use that, right? They would either ask me if electric's okay, and I would say no, the electric is not permitted. And then I would take a photograph of the individual with the blower. I may have done that before that. And then I take a photograph of the truck and the lettering on the truck or the license plate of the truck. And I would send an email to the building department, and then Courtney would prepare an affidavit for me, and I would sign off on that affidavit based on that, what I observed. And then we would mail the violation to the landscape company, not the individual who's using it,
Right.
right? But the landscape company, they were getting it, okay? Sometimes the landscape company owners were on site, and that was the issue that I shared with many of you regarding Charlotte and having this guy, you know, F this and F that type of thing. But most of the time it was the employee. So our board doesn't want to necessarily issue a $250 fine to an employee whose basically boss is telling them you have to use this blower. It's going to the owner. That's how I did it. That's how I did it. I sent it to the owner of the company at their address. They have licenses and all of that stuff. Some of the individuals didn't have a Westchester license, and that's a separate matter altogether, right? But most of them did, and they received the violation. We typically do about 90
So
violations.
is that gonna be the board's position in terms of the amendment to the statute, or are they doing something?
I don't know what the lawyer wants to do. Right, so the lawyer was kind of like, let me come up with something. I don't know what
The
Bob's doing.
lawyer was, if you read Judge Derrico's letter,
Mhm.
the lawyer, either Judge Derrico's wrong or the lawyer's wrong.
Right.
He thinks that it's a criminal violation. You can't criminalize the individual. You don't want to criminalize the homeowner. Judge Derrico says it's not a criminal violation. So, you know,
It's a code violation.
it's a code violation. So,
I think it's a code violation, but I don't know.
but the issue is, and this was raised at the meeting, if you now say the homeowner is not subject to this, you're actually cutting back the effect of this law in some people's view. Because ultimately, the homeowner is the one that calls the shots, and if the homeowner, I say this is a homeowner that doesn't want to get a ticket either. If I know that I could be liable, I'm gonna tell my landscaper, don't do this.
Right.
Exactly.
Why
That
should we
seemed to
not?
be one of the things that Judge Derrico objected to also, that she felt that these landscapers, you know, she had empathy for them and felt they were being targeted
Yeah, she's
unfairly.
talking about, but that's enforcement discretion, which the village has. I mean, if you have 3 people that could be legitimately liable, you can ticket, you can decide to issue violations to one, not the other.
Yeah.
That's within your enforcement discretion.
I thought it was the landscaper and the landscape company who was actually had a blower. If they had an electric blower, if they didn't have a blower and they had a broom, then there's no issue. And when we changed the law, right? If there's a gas powered blowers going on during the period of October 1st to May 15th, those are tickets, those are violations we're gonna issue. Right now, we don't issue violations during that period of time.
So we might have a view, I don't know what our view is, about if the board wants to cut back on people who could be tagged with violations. Do we think that's a good thing? Do we think it's a bad thing? Do we want to have a decision on it?
Did not our law, I mean, I remember when you wrote it up for the hangars, it stated that the landowner and the
Yeah, that's what I
landscaper
know.
were,
That's the current
that
law.
was our understanding.
That's what it
that-
says.
Okay,
So why are we not
liable,
targeting them?
50-50 or whatever.
Right, but we chose as
Yeah,
the staff, right, and the police department, we
Okay.
chose to issue the violation to the landscaper.
I see.
See, I don't have a problem with that. I would have a problem if the board decided to eliminate certain classes of people who are liable. Because I don't think we should tie our hands. We shouldn't tie your hands if you want to issue tickets to the landowner. You ought to be able.
But what we did was we had a flyer where we put it in the door, in the screen door or wherever, right? Right, and it was basically, earlier today, your landscaper was issued a $250 fine for using a gas powered blower. Please know that there's a prohibited period, whatever the flyer said. So when I took the photograph, spoke to the individual.
Lou,
So-
mute your phone.
But it's over here too.
Sounds like you've been breathing water gas.
So, we issued the violation to the landscaper, we notified her that the landscaper got a fine, right? I'm just, really what I was trying to do is not make money, but change the culture. Yeah.
He's snoring.
Change the culture, he's out. He's out. I know. He and I have the same problem. We get up, we have a cup of coffee, and then we go right back to sleep. That's what it is. We're
Very
constant,
boring.
we're narcolepsy, I guess it's narcolepsy, we have the same.
We don't have-
Doing that thing. Yeah.
So the question I have. Question for the group is, if the lawyer comes up with this idea that we're gonna cut back on the liability of the homeowner. Is that something we support, we disagree with, or we wanna take no position?
Is there an analogy in other fields that helps, like?
Strongly disagree.
Well, no, I mean, what I'm trying to say, is like, rent a
Tree.
car.
We do trees, we can do trees. So right now, if a tree is cut,
Yes,
I don't issue the violation to the tree company, I issue it to the property.
okay, so that's the analogy.
Cause they
That's the
hired the tree
So the
company.
company who hires the company is at fault that the company does not comply with the law.
That's how the tree law is written. That's
Ah.
not how the blower is written or, right? It could be the property owner or the individual. It's an or. I don't think it's and.
Can you do like second strike, the property
Yeah, it's
person
something like
gets
that.
it?
I can't do that, there's no
No.
way to track it.
Mm,
It's
no.
hard enough as it is.
So my,
We should do both.
my view is
I think
that
so
we
too.
should, if village is proposing and the lawyer proposes to cut back on the scope of the liability in terms of who could be possibly ticketed, we probably aren't in favor of that.
Yeah, we wanna keep it a little bit open. but
We don't
it's-
wanna have the law cut back, we wanna, have it more enforceable.
Can one create some sort of clarity? Is it like 50-50? I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking this, but.
No, so if the property owner is also the one using the blower, they get the fine. It's the one who uses the blower that should get the violation. Whether it's the landscape company or it's the homeowner who does their own lawn, who does their own blowing of leaves and all of that.
Let's see what does Bolzino.
Let's see what he comes up with. It won't be
Yeah, I
until.
agree, like the
And then so-
homeowner,
so-
you
so-
educate the homeowner, this is how you educate
We
the
did,
homeowner.
so we did, but we also issued tickets.
But don't you think that the landscaper is charging the homeowner saying, hey, I got this fine, you wanted me to blow your yard?
No, I think having the landowner liable,
Yeah, it's,
at least potentially, helps enforce it.
Yeah, I mean, I
It's
think
gotta be the
the homeowner has
sorry.
to have a stake. in it,
Yeah.
Right?
To be like, what is the law?
There's a lot of
Define it.
homeowners who just don't
It's large
actually
companies.
register what their landscapers are doing. What's that?
They said that they find with 3 people.
Oh,
They
yes.
do the guy who's actually blowing, my company and the homeowner. That's what she said.
Why don't I
Everybody.
do this? Why don't we, when Bolzino gets his act together and draft something.
Yeah.
Send it to me, I'll send it to the committee.
All right.
We can actually meet by, I can get emails from people as to what they're.
Well, yeah, but you can just like kind of review it and kind of provide your opinion. I'd rather you not deliberate, by email, but you can provide, as a lawyer, you can kind of like look at it and say, here, this is what I see, right?
But if you're saying it's either the landscaper or the homeowner, can we suggest we want it to be the option of both?
You can.
I think you have to
We
clarify it.
we can say whatever we want.
Yeah.
Like for the environmental committee, I don't know why this feels like a legality. This feels
Well, I
like
mean,
a
Well,
I think it's
legal
it's an
issue.
important issue, we should
We,
have a
it's important
position.
that it stops, but I don't know where our line
So-
of boundary is.
So I hate to be this person, but it really doesn't matter what we think, right? It's what the judge thinks.
Yeah, but the
So
judge
let's
is-
actually go to that issue
Yeah.
right now, because Judge Derrico wrote a letter in response to your
Yeah,
email,
but because I complain often.
and she copied us. So I don't think, generally speaking, I like to, if we stay in our lane, so you don't generally write letters to judges, but she wrote to us.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, why not respond to her?
Mhm.
And what I thought, I don't know if any of you read this letter, but what I thought an appropriate response, and what I would like to have authorization to draft is a letter to Judge Derrico making the following points. Number one, the law is important.
Yep.
I mean, she almost, your view was she thought this was a ridiculous law.
Yep.
and it shouldn't be enforced, and I
Pain in
think
the
we
neck,
should.
you're adding more to my docket.
Yeah.
That's what I thought it
We
was.
should say that we as a committee think this law is important because of the noise, because of the environmental impact. The health impact and the environmental impact on the lots, so number one. Number two, we agree that the landowner ought to be liable, but it should be a matter of enforcement discretion. We support the idea that we should give enforcement discretion to the village to ticket who they think is the most liable or most likely to be where the enforcement is most likely to be effective. And we agree that she said, well, we want, that there's a confusion between the municipalities, and I would say, yeah, we agree with that. We're trying to get more uniformity. And she said, well, maybe we should provide for gas rather than electric. And we can say we're doing it. So that's basically
You mean electric rather than?
electric gas.
Yeah.
Rather than gas.
Yeah.
So we're sort of accepting her idea that we're moving toward electric.
Right.
Without necessarily loving it, but at least it's better for the environment than.
So you can tell that she was a legislator at one time, right? She was a trustee at one time. You can tell that she was, right?
So I think a letter, a sort of a soft letter saying
With an
those things would be
attachment.
a good way of
An
responding.
attachment with the door hanger to explain all of the reasons that it's bad for the environment. Maybe she's not educated.
Right,
Okay.
I mean, I'm just saying, like,
Well, I was gonna,
was she ever?
maybe we could have an attachment to expand on all the
Environmental.
She lives in the neighborhood that gets the door hanger. She lives in that neighborhood. We go to the heights. She lives in the heights.
Attaching our current door.
But yeah, I agree.
To the
There's
letter.
anything wrong
is
No, I don't
with
think there's.
Say,
Yeah, and a copy of the letter that you sent to 700 landscapers.
Yes.
well, but
You know,
but the
you wanna
point
color
actually
it.
supports the point that this is not, we're not. This is no surprise. We're not ticketing unsuspected people. We
Yeah.
actually have, the village and the committee have done a tremendous amount of outreach to people that are violating the law, either know they're violating it or watch, because there's been a lot of.
One,
There's another opportunity next year when we make the change and all of that stuff. To be able to get some more press, some solid press on this,
I
right?
was actually just gonna say, you should take advantage this year with the leaves out. Maybe Oprah wants to come do a video, an educational video with LMC or something. Cause it's fall and now's the time that you can get footage of said mulching the
Yep.
leaves, saving the insects, whatever you wanna do, peace and quiet. Because when we have the law come out next year, we might not be able to get that together in time.
No, it's top of mind.
So
Yeah.
Jerry, if
I'd
you
like
would-
to, yeah, I'd like to, well, if you want to talk more about the
Sorry,
letter,
just
yeah.
The letter,
okay.
if you would send me a copy of the letter you sent to the landscaper.
Sure.
Also a copy of like a PDF of the door hanger.
Yep,
And I
okay.
can just attach it to the letter.
We
I
have
can
both.
send you
Get it.
both door hangers.
Yeah, Liam kind
PDF.
of worked
He
on
had
it.
it.
Yeah,
But I think we should endorse you writing this letter.
I
Yes.
agree.
I would absolutely. do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
You don't need us,
Motion.
you just write it.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
I want to interject at this point, since we're talking about education and we're talking about our village policy on leaves and the door hanger. So in March, Jen and I wrote that material together. And then we sent it and it went around, there were edits, and it went to Liam and it went to the door hanger. The same material was sent down to Robert to add to the DPW work. And that hasn't happened.
Mhm.
So I don't know, but,
I saw it today.
okay,
So I saw the email today.
okay,
So for Robert, his dad, Dr. Jerry,
mhm,
was having some issues and they started with home hospice,
right,
right? But now he's going to the Osborne. He's doing a lot
Okay,
better.
okay.
He's going to.
okay.
So
Yeah.
he's doing a lot better and he's going to the Osborne. I'll have Robert back on Monday.
Okay,
Okay, kind of focused, kind of, and I've been kind of taking it easy on him a little bit, right? But he'll be back on Monday and we'll get that out because
it
that's
goes
important
back
to me.
March.
Yeah, I know,
And
it's
now
important to
it's,
me.
really needs to be done, so.
And as far as the video, man, we do, our guys our Parks Department, mulches everything. We don't pick up any leaves.
Somebody go with
Yeah,
footage on it.
that's something that we could.
Footage,
Yeah.
footage.
And I have no problem paying LMC a couple $100 to get footage. I have no
Yeah,
problem.
And honestly, you can involve students in that. They can
Yep.
do their little research, get facts for LMC. It would be great.
Can I say
So-
one last thing about the leaf blowers, which is on the enforcement angle? To, given this in the spirit of unified, villages working together, unified law, but the enforcement also take a standard approach. Such that a gardening company that operates in Larchmont faces the same enforcement circumstance in America.
That's hard, because what Debbie said to you is that the landscaper, the individual operating, the owner of the company, the individual operating the blower, and the property owner are getting the fines.
In March, March.
It's a different law.
We're writing a new law, so.
Right, I know.
As we progress on this thing, uniformity
We're
of
gonna move
enforcement, but also be
Okay.
a goal, and maybe that would appease, the
Okay.
judge a little bit, hey man, we're taking this seriously, or hey lady, we're taking this
Yeah.
seriously from all fronts, not just the law, but the, enforcement of the law.
Taking your ideas
Indeed.
and running them.
Also the issue that the cops in the Merrimack village are much closer family members with the landscapers than they are, say, Larchmont.
I don't know. So I
That's
know
what I heard.
here,
You think
so I,
folks in Orienta
so
are
I know
related
here,
to-
there was a big,
Okay, no.
it's only been the last 5 years that, it's only been the last 5 years where we've hired outside of the community, a lot of Mount Vernon, because they're transfers and others. But before that, it was a point of pride in previous administration that they hired. Half the workforce here was hired off of a local list. Half the police department right now was hired off of a local list, all Mamaroneck originals, right? All Mamaroneck originals. And yes, there is an issue, right? They're going to arrest the individual who holds up a deli with a gun, even if they went to school with them. But if they see someone with a blower, right, they're not going to. So there's that. There's that.
I
It's
think
just,
that's a lot of the
I get
problem.
it.
with why
It is.
it's hard to enforce
It's
it.
part of
it,
Because it's-
and I don't know if that's the
That's
case in
reality,
Larchmont.
but yeah.
That's reality.
Exactly.
And then what about
But
promoting, I know
we
you
need
brought
to
up
know
there being
that
a
that's
certain
the
number.
problem.
Okay.
Where was that?
Getting
ever
close to
promoted?
witching hour.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
So let's,
It wasn't.
well, we could go a little lower, but I don't want to go too much over.
What about, I'm so sorry, what about the gas, trade-in thing?
Yeah, we would.
Yeah.
What's that?
29th and 30th are the
Uh-oh.
two dates,
Is there-
there's a Friday,
September?
yep, September 29 and 30, October 10, sorry, this is, you gotta remember to pick something up from my way. Snooze again.
Isn't
Uh,
that the same days? Yeah.
October,
Is that-
yeah, but on the, we still have our, the trade-in is at the DPW,
Okay,
right? And then October 4 and 5, Friday and Saturday.
Has that been published?
No, not yet.
No?
So I needed to come here and talk to you about that. We're gonna push that out. It's gonna be in the Friday newsletter, and then it's gonna be in all subsequent Friday newsletters.
how are you
The
going?
form is real simple, right? I stole it from
Could you do
Bedford.
One favor for us?
Yeah,
Because I think the money came from the environments.
CSC, right?
Yeah.
Yes, was it, well, it's a CSC, but
Mhm.
I think they should understand that it's the committee's work that got this money.
You got it.
I mean, figure out a diplomatic way of saying it.
And they
Why not
haven't.
toot our own whole
One
horn?
other
But-
How are
thing,
you going to make sure that all 50 don't get eaten up on the 29th and 30th?
That should be the problem that we have.
Right.
I'm
I-
just curious.
I'm not-
First search, so.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just wondering, I don't know. 'cause
Yeah,
some of my
I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure if
We
that's the
can't
case. right?
Okay.
tell somebody that shows up on the 30th
Yeah.
that we've used up your.
Yeah, then I'll just cancel.
Order
the
for the day, you have to
14th.
come back
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah, that would be
You'd
good.
be so lucky.
So,
That would be.
question,
Really?
in the minutes, it said you were gonna check into Ace Hardware, the new hardware.
Mhm.
Are they on the list?
Nope, they're not. It's KRB and
Okay.
it's
Oh,
Foley's.
Ace
Okay.
wanted to do
The
it.
Ace
or-
No,
interested?
they didn't understand what we were talking about.
Okay.
We went over there and like, it's a voucher. Well, we're a franchise and so they're a franchise.
Okay.
So
They gave
I
us
don't-
a very generous donation to
And-
the Pollinator Festival, so
That's
we wanna
nice.
make sure we,
I think they had an issue with the Ace franchise
okay.
where
Oh.
KRB and Foley's, they're family owned and they can do what they want.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
that,
do that.
that's where to put it.
I
They
thought
were very
KRB was,
nice.
yeah,
Very good.
that's fine.
It's okay,
Yeah.
I'll find a way.
Okay.
Can we move to the next topic?
Yes.
Alright, so we spoke of during the presentation earlier about Oprah, which I'd never heard of before, but it sounds like a really good organization. Some of you obviously know Joe Liberty. I was very impressed with him. I never met him. He is sounds like a very good program with some interest, students that could potentially be interested in some of our projects. What he asked us to do is, if we were interested, to tell him what our priorities are in terms of give him a project or 2 or 3 that he can promote, or we can promote through him to the students. And it seems to me that one of them has got to be the Greenway.
Sure.
Hey, you wanna stay on, or you good? We're almost done.
Let's
Okay.
do some more.
No problem.
So
Yeah, it was tricky, but
just to give
just
you,
talking about Oprah, not to.
just to give you a sense of what is at stake here.
Okay,
Number
see you
one,
later.
this
Bye-bye.
is a 4-year program. So we want to have a project that the students can get into and stick with for a 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 years. And so it's
Okay.
not bad that it's for example, Greenways has a
Okay.
long
Life.
gestation
Yeah.
period.
Right.
You don't want something that, is one and done, because
Yeah.
doesn't help his program. So
What would you think they would be doing on the Greenway project?
I think we could figure out things, figuring out land ownership, figuring out funding opportunities, figuring out how to string things together, maybe taking a look at comparing SLR to our proposal and seeing where they overlap. I'm sure we can figure out things.
There's also a lot of creative ideas out there. In my travels this summer, I saw things that could be applicable just by contrast.
Right,
Say,
we're
okay,
gonna say
here's
right
what
now.
another place.
So let me give
You
you
can
two,
take a look and say there are other greenways in
Let me-
this country
let me
that
give you 2 examples that Okra has worked with the village, is that there's a referendum this November to change, right, to change the terms of the election. That came from Okra, right? That's pretty high level stuff, right? That's stuff that legislators talk about. That came from Okra. Now they're working with Larchmont, they're working with the town, basically with the Marinex's Union Free School District, to get the municipalities to provide them some money so the students, the juniors, I think they're juniors, want to educate 4th graders on participatory budgeting. And they want to have money from us, so they're probably going to get 3,000, but they hit us up for 5,000. Where they would have $3,000 of our budget, which is not a problem, to kind of do something with it, whether it's, look for a need and see what we need to buy, or maybe some kind of a study or something along those lines. So they're good at the high level stuff. That's what I'm trying to portray. They're really good at the high level stuff.
And the other thing they did last year was the county ban on plastic
Yeah,
utensils.
I remember
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Which is great.
And they might have done straws at one point as well.
They
if
did.
I
So-
recall.
I follow them on Instagram.
So I mean, we're talking about these are excellent,
Smart
excellent,
kids.
yeah, smart kids.
So the point is, let's figure out a project, 1, 2 projects, 3 projects that we can propose to them. We have to actually sell them on the project, so it's not as if we can say we want to have you work on the Greenway and we're all of a sudden we get people.
I
But
thought
I
you were
think
gonna
the
come help
Greenway is
me
a
weed.
really,
That's fine.
really interesting project because it's
Forget that.
policy, it's
That's what
politics,
we do.
it's environmental protection, it's land usage, it's social justice because it's going through. It's a very interesting. project.
Easily, I don't know, I would care more about the
So I
pollinators,
think the
but
Greenway is a very good candidate. Does anybody have any other ideas?
She does.
pollinators. Has anyone driven down the street to see the lack of flowers at every residential house in the village of Mamaroneck? And how pollinators are
You know,
supposed
our
to
biggest
survive
issue
here?
is education.
Well, that's very
Find
true.
Outreach and they can.
And how
so
the high
how do
school
we-
has a bee club and they don't have a native plant garden.
They
Big
try,
problem.
there's a little.
Community outreach and education as always.
But like,
So,
like
what
you're
would
missing
be the
so many
project?
points. Saving the pollinators in the village of Mamaroneck.
I think
So
I think
I'm creating a
what Chris is
pollinator.
saying about
policy.
education, having them.
Pollinator
Yeah.
pathway, so as a, we have a Greenway.
I don't know, we have
I
to
think-
work on it.
I
but
think
something.
one of those mandate, I think what we should propose for a group of kids to do, like following on your idea,
Yeah.
but is like go along wherever they wanna work, because they'll decide which municipality, whether it be Larchmont or the town or the village, and reach out to businesses like Apple, who
Yeah.
already is doing it, and reach out to businesses and installing or helping them install pollinator gardens in private businesses like up and down the post road or up and down the avenue.
It should really be the village, though. If we're asking them, it should strictly be the
Well, we can
village.
try to sell them on the village, but even if they do it somewhere else. it's still better.
So.
Is that an Oprah project?
What
That
would
could
be
be
the
another
ask?
project.
Yeah, that's sort of, I think,
How
a
would-
good
How would you
project.
describe this project?
It's something.
That's
pollinator.
twice a month
Okay,
for
that's-
students.
You have to be a
So
mentor.
it just seems like we need to make sure that there are people here who really want to be mentors.
I'm
See you,
going
Lindsay.
to be a mentor on the.
Bye.
Renee and I took a walk along.
I could be a mentor on that
Yes.
pollinator
I
thing, or
can't think,
anything
I can't
composting
think
related,
what I could
I'm
ask the
doing.
kids to do. I
I think,
honestly,
what if we think about it, because
you
this
know,
is.
Yeah,
on the
this is a
greenway,
larger-
what high level thinking they're gonna
I've heard it
do.
all, but I
these
think that
thorny
if you
problems.
think that they're capable of high level, and we have a lot, there's so many high level places, but give them a specific focus, let's not make it.
There's a lot of them. I feel like you could have. a few
But they're
projects, right?
integrated, because the pollinator pathway and a greenway for people, like, they can be integrated, but they can also follow, there's natural paths, and then there's people paths. And there's bike paths, and like, how are things going to flow, and there's water paths through the village, so that we can all.
So, given the time, we have to make a decision as to what I say to Joe Roberti.
We'll get back to you with a couple of ideas.
Let's remember, it's the beginning of the school year.
I
So
know.
you
It is,
wanna-
it is. We wanna
you
get
don't
it
wanna
now.
Put it off.
Time.
But do they have, because they've already presented to us, so I think they already have.
They have a new point coming in
There's
next year.
so many people, they're,
Not for freshmen?
Not the freshmen,
Okay,
freshmen
so
don't
you
have
know,
project
yeah.
ideas yet, they're like interviewing, so the sophomores just got done like interviewing potential like people are trying to find like. Something they might be interested in, and then they're gonna get a project going. And then find mentors and then.
We can say,
At the sophomore.
I can say, without being definitive, that these are the areas. So we can tell in two areas, one is the Greenway and one is, the other one is. Whether it's, we call it pollinators or native plants,
Pollinator
but
pathway.
green,
Yeah.
green
What about, you had talked in the other meeting about Taylor.
Taylor's Lane we could do,
Mm.
but there's a whole other.
Leaf blowers.
No, that's very concrete and very short term.
In the Village of Mamaroneck, so my group is working in Larchmont, but they're trying to get a few restaurants composting. And bringing in a company called Curbside Compost, like getting more of a larger scale. And we could try to have that be done here, they could do restaurants, they could work with maybe apartment buildings. Like trying to make it larger scale, like move beyond.
Yeah.
single family
Yeah.
homes.
Well,
Yeah, we don't food scrap apartment buildings.
if they,
No,
if
or
they have a group of
That'd be
people
a great
doing
thing to
food
do.
scraps in the village of Larchmont or the town of Mamaroneck. Would be a logical thing for that group to extend to us, and maybe we could talk to Joe about that. Sounds to me like we don't have a consensus as to what we're gonna propose.
Well, I think those are all good ideas, and then when they'll bite on something that they're
Yeah.
interested in.
You gotta
I
give them as many ideas as you
A
can.
menu of
Okay,
options.
so
Such a bullet point.
the Greenway would
If
be
he
one,
comes
native
up with-
plant, pollinator.
Pollinator,
Scraps.
Largely outreach
composting.
and education.
Yes.
No, but it's not, because it's the hardest thing to do.
But I'll go
Yeah,
back
we-
to the leaf blower outreach and education. It'll take 4 years.
Community
So-
outreach
Apply it to each one of
education
those
about
three.
pollinators
Yeah,
So,
well, that's all.
and about leave the leaves.
Impervious driveways.
So-
And
Taylor's Lane was mentioned, I wanna give you an update on Taylor's. Very short, I had a talk with Mike Murphy today, who's the boss of the remedial project manager, at Taylor's Lane, I've been emailing him for months. I said, Mike. This site is just sitting there, 7 acres, in a very densely populated village, it's fenced off and doing nothing. You need to help us move this site. And he said, yes, I agree, I have to get to them. So he's basically, I sort of lit a fire under his bush. He's gonna talk to the remedial project manager, they can see what they can do about removing the requirement for a fence. They're gonna see what they can do about finalizing the site management plan. He said, he promised me he'd get to it.
So I should provide my update as well. So Lou Young and I went to the town of Rye and met with Gary Zuckerman as well as Debbie Reisner. Gary's the supervisor, Debbie's the administrator. And we talked about going in on a joint project, since they own about an acre of Taylor's Lane and we own about 6.5 or 6.25 acres of that site, to do a joint solar field project. We're doing, Gary's not convinced yet, because he wants to take the 400,000 that a local garden center has offered him and, plug a hole into a town budget. And I said, look, I'd rather, you not do that. And so that we could capitalize on the entire site. So it's a permitted use. We're not puncturing the membrane, any of that stuff. Lou wants to incorporate a walking trail and potentially, exercise stations and those kinds of things around the solar field. It's passive, it's environmentally friendly. Lou has already, renamed us the eco-friendly village. And so I'm working with some state larger vendors that have worked in the state building solar fields to try to get some kind of an idea of what the cost would be. I'm hoping it's zero. And we're looking at a 20-year term, and part of it would go to the town of Rye. So basically we would produce the energy, put it back into the grid, and then we would get the rebate or the discount on these lights, as well as Gary's facilities, or, town of Rye
This
facilities.
is also, you can tell your friends with Planet Ride that to the extent DEC still is gonna have some decision-making power on this, they really are interested in solar fields.
They are, I know,
They're not interested in expanding gardens.
right. So my challenge with Gary was the $400,000. I need to sell this so that $400,000 that the garden center owner wants to give him is not as attractive.
You have to show that the money in a refund or whatever is sizable over X number of years.
Correct.
And we know it goes on 20 years, God knows what.
So that's important to someone like Gary, who's a real smart individual and a great supervisor. But we went even further. Lou committed that we would call it the Gary Zuckerman Solar Field. So I think we might have it, but that's Lou, and that's how he jokes around. He's hysterical. But that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do. So you should know that, because you're talking to Murphy, and
I think we're gonna get finally some movement.
We
on
are.
the-
I
on
think
the
we are.
Regulatory part.
Can't
Because-
we do it even if they sell? Can't we do it just in our portion?
Right.
Or is it
we
too
can, but they have a pretty big chunk. They have a pretty big chunk. They want to take it. No, we have the bigger chunk, but they have an acre.
1 acre.
They have an acre. It's
small?
pretty, it could really be beneficial to him.
They have an acre, we have 6.
Yeah.
And, but if the DEC will not permit them to sell it to,
I'm not sure.
No, it's not part, they're unrestricted, so they don't have,
I see, okay.
yeah.
I'm not sure DEC has a veto power, but it may have some influence.
Do you have any idea what the annual value of the energy produced on that site?
That's what I have to get the company to give me.
Yeah. 'cause
We've been
then
guessing
you
at
can
that.
dangle that and take it at
Kilowatt
present
hours,
value.
and then the
would be
census
very
is
large.
huge, kilowatt hours.
I gave him something that could really be, because the town of Rye really doesn't have much going on. The town of Rye is a town that has no unincorporated section, so they really just, the villages run the town of Rye because it's an overlay. So this would be something that they could actually sink their teeth into, right? I think that it could really work.
So if you need help from the committee.
I'll let you know.
In terms of persuading anybody. that's-
This happened Friday afternoon. We went over there Friday afternoon, so Lou's been trying to work every angle on this one.
Okay.
He's a good advocate. I mean, he fell asleep tonight, but he's a good advocate.
It's quite-
So, it is what it is.
He's working so hard.
Yeah, we're working so hard, yeah.
Even mentioned it at Debbie's event.
So have a bunch of other agenda items, but I think I'm
Yeah,
gonna
this
call it
is
a night.
it's very good.
Yeah, he's
Very-
Lou's a professional.
You should also tell Mr. Roberti.
Do I getting viburnums and
That if
spice
any
bush
of
for
you
you?
wanna come to the.
Cause I can get those all day long,
Okay,
okay?
I actually invited
I
them
mean,
to this one.
that's.
Yeah, or
You gonna send me a list?
someone may
we can
show
do
up
it.
if they're
Okay.
very interested in
Now-
something, and then they can ask.
See this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it
I
like-
move that we adjourn our meeting.
Where is your comment?
Where you got the order. Okay.
Flower
All in favor?
friends, if anyone is
Aye.
around next
Good night.
week,
You driving home?
we need We need to incorporate if anyone has time next week. That little bit.
I'm the expert forgiveness.
Someone can do it anytime, I can't.
But we don't know where this.
Really, Marlene
It could be here.
Yeah. It looks, it's very good looking, it really, it's growing, but it has a lot of ragweed.
Alright, so don't worry about it.
Jen and I were.
Okay, just gonna talk about expansion.
Thank you, Madam.
I don't think.
That's such a valuable piece of information. I know he does, I know he does.
Yeah. I'm such a positive.
It is very valuable. If only it was elevated, parking on the bottom, and, you know, elevator to it. It's a very valuable spot.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna
It's off this.
run from my
Yeah,
yard.
you don't. But we have an initiative.
I'm gonna cheers, that's all I do.
That's gonna be more dredging, that's gonna be more dredging. Let's see that whole section, it's all coming out.
So, I mean, I worry what might happen here.
Yeah, but this was, I mean, this was completely, we're talking about 10 feet of water.
Yeah.
This whole neighborhood.
I mean, I get.
Someone?
I like walk into, like, in my community, try to look at all these trees and everything.
Nah, I don't know about that, yeah, I don't know about that, okay.
You know.
Let me get you, send me a list, let me get you some
I'll
props.
look for here.
I can work on that.
In the park, they gotta let you know.
Okay. Do we have a sign up? The sign's up, right?
Oh,
Yeah, the sign's up, okay, good. Good.
And the bench is around.
Benches too, okay, good. You got benches before the dog park. Pretty good. We were kind of pushing you off, and now you became a priority. You did, all right.
1 second, 30 seconds. These wings, they're big, I've got a week and a half left before this festival, so I'm wondering if, and like, my husband was tasked with building the stand. And the one is already like attached to the stand, it's one of those little, like, where the little people put their faces and they can go to butterfly wings or something. The wings though, I would love for them to be mounted like permanently, I think that would be awesome. I'm just not sure I'm gonna be.
Yeah, I had a fine, I was just curious, because I
We would have a
went there and I
pole,
was
we would
like.
have a 4x4, 6x6 behind it.
So, well, that's already on a stand. The
Okay.
trickier ones, these are huge.
Yeah,
That's the.
I was just very curious.
That's my daughter, and she's actually forward.
Far away, I was
They're
guys would-
huge.
I mean, I was there the whole, I was working
But it's
the
less
whole day.
Do you think they could like
Well,
Should
apparently
I
they're gonna widen the whole. river
varnish them and then
in that
just
area.
give them the wings?
Alright.
No, we'll do it on site. Let's just
Whatever,
call them, and
I
then
guess,
we'll
so.
furnish them on site. We'll have my guys do it.
Hopefully
You don't have
the
to do
trees
it.
and rock.
You know what?
No,
But we'll do it.
cause like they're
I
done.
like it
They're just like in my dining room.
Okay.
They've done for a while. The back is
You
painted
know what
black,
I'm
so they
saying?
look nice
I
at
have
all.
an attitude about that.
You don't need to, just.
So we're gonna go do like a site plan for where all the vendors be, blah, 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 on Thursday. So maybe on Thursday
Well, I
we
hope-
can,
Let's get down on the ground
Yep.
and let's talk
Spots.
about what's down there.
and then
You know,
they'll
what's
select
this
them.
and
You
what's
should
that
just
and what
whatever
we're
you
doing.
I'll have Jeff meet you guys.
You should, it's
They don't
okay.
even want
On Thursday?
Yes, let me see what time.
No, I think
Yeah, we
we
had-
copies.
You don't do it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know Jeff now.
Yeah. Okay.
What about Dorothy?
Okay, so I'll get our time together.
Dorothy is bad.
Get your time together, I'll tell
Sorry.
Jeff you guys are gonna be at the Marine Education Center at this
Like,
time.
do you have any?
After
ideas where
COVID,
they-
I was fine
No,
for a
Jeff.
week and then now I have a consistent call.
I mean, it'd be nice if it was pretty behind them too, because people like the idea of
Send her
the
the
front, like
application.
here, the butterfly.
No.
You've seen those, like
I've
around,
seen-
right?
honestly
I'm not engaging.
Did Jan leave? I thought Jan had a
I'm
question.
sorry.
Shut my
Sorry.
So
I'll see you tomorrow.
I'll get Jeff connected.
Between 9 and 6.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'll be there.
Okay, and how to hook them up.
Yeah.
Like,
I was there and
I
the
feel,
freaking
and I
cat was
painted
there
all
today.
this stuff black, and I can
I
get
would
like
like to
black
paint
paint,
it
they wanna
and
paint
put
them,
it
and
in.
they.
Don't worry about that.
I'm not worried.
The cat belongs to, you know, the guy who works,
About the wings.
the guy,
But
it
I'm
belongs
sure
to the guy
he's
working.
He will.
I know, but he obviously.
If you don't think the problem comes to-
Like, it's an outdoor.
I know.
Palm tree.
I was reading today and an electric bike jumped up at me, I went, "Oh," and I smashed it, and the guy from the furniture shop said, "Are you okay?"
See
And
ya.
I'm like, "This," but I just, electric bike and jumped at me and it scared me.
Did you read all my stuff about lantern flies?
No, I haven't read a thing, I haven't even been out looking.
We're building traps at the library on Saturday.
Good.
Well, down in this Nostrand area along the stream, there's a lot of tree of heaven. And that is, yeah, that's gotta
They
go.
can't reproduce
You've gotta get,
without the tree.
if you get the
Really?
tree, of-
Yeah.
Even more reason to get rid of that.
yeah, the tree,
I have my whole presentation. I have my-
okay, good. So you know all about the tree of heaven.
And milkweed is toxic, that's awesome.
I don't know about that.